Shabbat Shalom. This week's Torah portion is Ekev, and it is in Deuteronomy. We are in the middle of Moses' last speeches to the nation of Israel. And I'd like to focus on two specific portions of the speech that we see in this week's portion. First of all, in chapter 7, beginning in verse 17, "If you shall say in your heart, 'These nations are more than I, how can I dispossess them?' You shall not be afraid of them, but shall well remember what the Lord your God did to Pharaoh and to all of Egypt, the great trials which your eyes saw, and the signs and the wonders, and the mighty hand, and the stretched out arm, whereby the Lord your God brought you out. So shall the Lord your God to all the people of whom you are afraid. Moreover, the Lord your God will send the hornet among them, until they that are left and hide themselves from you be destroyed. You shall not be terrified by them, for the Lord your God is among you, a mighty God and terrible." Here we have definite words of comfort that Moses is encouraging the people. Don't be afraid. You're going into the land. You are about to conquer. There will be mighty nations there, but God will be with you. But then listen to the next part. "And the Lord your God will put out those nations before you, little by little. You may not consume them at once, lest the wild beasts of the field increase upon you. But the Lord your God shall deliver them to you, and shall destroy them with a mighty destruction until they are destroyed." Here we have a very definite, very interesting point. On the one hand, we have this concept that you need not be afraid. God will use his mighty hand as he did in Egypt. Well, what was the destruction like in Egypt? It was immediate. It was, there it was. They were in the Red Sea, and bam, they're gone. We have the nation of Israel going out from Egypt in the middle of the night. All of a sudden, Pharaoh says, "Leave," and they're leaving within minutes, within hours. Here, though, God says, no, it's going to be gradually. Why? Not as a way of diminishing God's potential, but it is going to be gradual because of a concern for what would happen to the land and what would happen to the people of Israel should that destruction be immediate. There's a concern here that there should not be a situation of completely empty land, that wild animals will be able to come in and roam because you've destroyed one civilization and you haven't yet had a chance to build up another one. So there'll be some sort of a gradual process that goes on here. And yet, at the same time, we have again, "And he shall deliver their kings into your hand, and you shall destroy their name from under heaven. There shall no man be able to stand before you until you have destroyed them." And then it goes on to talk about the severity of pagan worship and how they must be careful. "The carvings of their gods shall you burn with fire. You shall not desire the silver or gold that is on them." Here, this is not just a question of pagan worship, but a question of, will the riches, will the silver and the gold ensnare them? Will it distract them from what they need to be concentrating on? "For it is an abomination to the Lord your God. Neither shall you bring an abomination into your house, lest you become accursed like it. But you shall utterly detest it, and you shall utterly abhor it, for it is a cursed thing." Here then we have what becomes a paradigm for what the conquest of Israel is supposed to look like. And it's a very difficult test, because at the one hand, we are not going to have a parting of the Red Sea. The children of Israel are going to walk into the land, and all of a sudden, all the nations are going to be disappeared. Lightning will strike, or whatever. No, it's going to be a process of battle, and a process that will enable the children of Israel to conquer and settle at a rate that is humanly possible, so that the land will not become a place of wild animals. It won't turn into a jungle. But at the same time, that presents a danger, because there is a period of time where the nations are still in the land. And therefore, God is warning the Jewish people, don't look and see what they're doing. Don't let their gold and their silver or their idol worship ensnare you. And of course, this is the challenge, to at the same time have to be living for at least a period of time in the same nation with the other nations, but yet not be influenced by it. And this is, of course, something that we can relate to even to today. We've come back to the land of Israel, and the risk of being influenced, of having influences within the land or from beyond the land that take us away from what our vision needs to be, that take us away from what our goal needs to be, and that is, of course, to conquer the land and to create a society that worships God, that doesn't worship gold and silver, that doesn't worship pagan idols. And there's one more section that I want to focus on. This is a little bit later in chapter 11, verse 10. Where here Moses describes what is the nature of the land itself, the land of Israel. For the land into which you go to possess it is not as the land of Egypt, from whence you came out, where you did sow your seed and watered it with your foot like a garden of vegetables. But the land into which you go to possess it is a land of hills and valleys, and drinks water of the rains of heaven, a land which the Lord your God cares for. The eyes of the Lord your God are always upon it from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. What is the main difference here that Moses is talking about in the land, between the land of Egypt and the land of Israel? Well, the land of Egypt is fed from the Nile. We have this image of your feet are watering it. The water comes from the ground, from the Nile, and therefore everything you plant, there's always water available we know this along the Nile Delta, and this is very easy to grow things in that area. What happens in the land of Israel? Here is a land that gets its water from the rains of the heaven. And what's the next verse? And the eyes of God are always upon the land. In order for this land to grow and blossom, we need God. We need to look up to the heavens, pray for the rain, and only then will the rain come. And of course, just after that verse, we have, starting in verse 13, come to pass, if you hearken diligently to my commandments, which I command you this day, to love the Lord your God, to serve him with all your heart, with all your soul, what will happen? What is the very first promise? Then I will give you the rain of your land in its due season. What Moses is telling the children of Israel is that this is a completely different kind of existence. You are going into the land of Israel. So we saw earlier, you have to be careful not to be influenced by the pagan nations. You have to be not to be influenced or drawn to the materialism of the gold and the silver. But what do you have here when you go into the land of Israel? You have to always be looking upward for rain. Everything about what you are going to do, if you are going to succeed, it's going to be because God's eyes are upon you and your eyes are upon heaven. Shabbat Shalom from Samaria.